bacteria, those pathogenic bacteria, can make their way into lymphatic capillaries, but typically they get filtered out at the level of the regional lymph nodes. We said that at the level of the lymph nodes, they're intercepted. They're usually phagocytosed by macrophages, and then they're presented, or pieces of them, little antigenic fragments are presented to lymphocytes. We said that lymphocytes then proliferate. In the case of B lymphocytes, they then differentiate into plasma cells and produce antibodies. Okay, and once an organism is coated by antibodies, it's marked for destruction. So the idea here is simply that lymph nodes filter lymph. We said, though, that sometimes, if the bacterial load that's entered into a lymphatic vessel, an afferent lymphatic vessel, if it's overwhelming, then it can get past those regional lymph nodes. And those bacteria can be carried with the lymph into the bloodstream. Well, our last line of defense in that case is the spleen. The spleen filters blood. Okay? The spleen filters blood. Hold on 1 second. All right, now, when we dissected the dogs, you should have seen a splenic artery, and it enters into the spleen like this. The spleen's a lot bigger than you would think, isn't it? Part of it is it's filled with blood. Now, as that splenic artery enters, what it does is it begins to subdivide. Like this. Okay. And all of these little branches of the splenic artery, these are called central arteries. So each one of these is referred to as a central artery. Okay? And each central artery is surrounded by a sheath of lymphocytes and macrophages. So it's a dense sheath of lymphocytes and macrophages, and we call this tissue here surrounding the central arteries white pulp. Okay? I'm not going to draw it around every central artery, but again, it's just a cluster of lymphocytes and macrophages. It's called white pulp because if you look at a living spleen, let's say someone undergoes a splenectomy, and you cut through the spleen, this tissue that surrounds each of the central arteries has a very pale appearance. It appears whitish. But that's only true in living tissue. That's the term white pulp. When you look at the spleen under the microscope, the tissue that surrounds the central arteries is actually darker staining. It's what we call basophilic. It stains kind of a dark blue or purple. Okay? So when we use the term white pulp, that's only a designation that's true for living tissue. Under the microscope, this white pulp actually looks darker. It stains darker. Okay? Now, the rest of the tissue outside of the white pulp is called red pulp. If I were to kind of indicate the tissue between these little areas of white pulp, this would be called red pulp. And it's called red pulp because it's very vascular. It's got a lot of what are called venous sinuses. And so it gives that area a reddish appearance in light. Not under a microscope necessarily. Although under the microscope it appears lighter staining than the white pulp. Now, I'm going to show you what happens. These central arteries give off little branches, arterioles, and capillaries that enter into the red pulp. And the splenic circulation is what we call an open circulation. What that means is the blood that's traveling through the central arteries and its branches heading toward the red pulp releases those formed elements, those red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets into the tissue. Okay? So anything that's traveling within the central artery, as it passes out the white pulp, it's released into the tissue. In fact, in the tissue, it forms little clusters of cells called cords, splenic cords. And these splenic cords are positioned between the venous sinuses. What's going to happen within the spleen is that all these formed elements that have escaped the circulation now have to re-enter the circulation through the venous sinuses. So this is the only location in the body where there is an open circulation, where the formed elements, the blood, leaves the circulation and then has to re-enter. Now, many times, what happens is, as these cells try to re-enter the circulation, if they're not flexible enough, they get picked off. You know, when we talked about hematology, we said that old or senescent red blood cells are very flexible. Mm-hmm. Remember, we talked about your boyfriend. What do you look for in a boyfriend? Flexibility, yeah. That's a sign of youth. Okay? And so, by being flexible, they can squeeze their way back into these venous sinuses and make their way back into the circulation. If they're not very flexible, if they're old, they get stuck. And so this is how old red blood cells are simply removed. After leaving the circulation and attempting to re-enter through these venous sinuses in the red pulp, they get stuck and they get removed. Okay? In the same way, some of the other elements can get removed, like platelets or white blood cells. Okay? Now, these splenic cords, or some people call them Billross cords, within the red pulp, they're going to contain all of the formed elements within the blood. They're going to contain red blood cells, your different white blood cells, particularly lymphocytes, and then plasma cells, which are derived from lymphocytes, macrophages, platelets, combination. Now, if you have a bacteria traveling within the bloodstream, a pathogenic organism like a strep, so here's a little strep organism right here. He's happy. He's made it past the lymph nodes. He's in the circulation. And now, as he enters into the spleen, he leaves the circulation. And he finds himself isolated within a red pulp. And this is where he may come into contact with the macrophage that's going to recognize it as being foreign, as not belonging to self. It will attack it, okay? It will break it into little pieces, and it will present those little antigenic particles, pieces, to lymphocytes. And of course, those lymphocytes will proliferate, differentiate, and become active in the fight against that particular bacteria. So our spleen is the last line of defense. So people who have undergone a splenectomy are at increased risk from certain infections. Like if they develop a pneumonia, they are much more likely to become septic. Why? Because lots of times when you get a pneumonia, bacteria can make their way into the bloodstream. In you and I, those bacteria are picked off by the spleen. If you've had a splenectomy, there's no organ to pick off those circulating bacteria. So they proliferate within the blood and cause a condition called sepsis, which is life-threatening. Okay? So the spleen is an important organ. I know that Drew likes to call it the mean spleen. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah, because it's so important. That and the liver. How do we know the liver is important? Well, it's called the liver. Right? You can't live without a liver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. All right. Y'all had a good break. I didn't even ask y'all. Y'all had a good break, by the way? Okay. Callie, you were just chomping at the bit to get back, I bet.
I'm here?
Yeah. Yes. That's up. You were. I know you were. All right. Let's do this. I'm going to do something radical here. I'm going to put this on slideshow. Hold on. watch this. Yeah.
10 years later.
All right. So right here is just kind of a diagram of the organization of the spleen. If you were to take it out and then cut it, take a section of it, you would see that here's the splenic artery, and it subdivides into these central arteries. And this white that surrounds the central artery represents white pulp. You can see that these little branches coming off the central arteries are going to release circulating blood cells into the tissue. This beige-looking tissue here, this is part of the red pulp. It's called either splenic cords or Milross cords. And from here, those elements of the blood try to make their way back into these venous sinuses. Okay? And into central veins and back into the splenic vein, back to the circulation. All right. Now, what I wanted to do today, let's talk about some of the splenic functions. Remember when we talked about blood, we said that there are two major types of lymphocytes. And we call them B cells and T cells. Or some people call them B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Okay? And these lymphocytes are part of our immune system, our army against pathogenic organisms or material. What does pathogenic mean? Disease causing, yeah. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but B cells don't directly attack pathogens. When B cells are exposed to a piece of a pathogen, okay, what they do is they divide and differentiate into plasma cells. And we said plasma cells produce what?
Antibodies.
What's another name for antibodies? Immunoglobulins. Those immunoglobulins then will then leave the lymphatic organ, whether it be a lymph node or the spleen, and they enter into the bloodstream. And they seek out cousins of that bacteria to whom they were exposed. So if you stepped on a nail, the regional lymph nodes are going to contain lymphocytes that produce antibodies, immunoglobulins, that enter into the bloodstream and return back to the foot and coat all of the cousins of that bacterial organism that made its way up the lower extremity. Once those organisms are coated with antibody, they're marked for destruction. Now, so B cells provide an indirect attack. They don't directly attack the pathogenic organisms. On the other hand, T cells, these here, when they're exposed to antigenic fragments of a bacterial pathogen, they divide and differentiate into active cells that will enter the bloodstream and directly attack the organism. So T cells perform a direct attack. It's called cell-mediated immunity. Whereas B cells perform an indirect attack via antibodies. And that type of attack is called humoral immunity. Humoral means that antibodies are involved.
What was the first one you said, Dr. T?
Cell-mediated, meaning that the T cells are going to have a direct engagement, cell to cell, with the pathogen. Okay, so part of the function of the spleen is this immune function involving lymphocytes, B cells and T cells, that once they get exposed to a pathogen, they proliferate, they differentiate, and then attack in some way. But the spleen has other functions. We said within the red pulp, aged or defective red blood cells and platelets are removed. Remember we said that generally red blood cells live to be about 100 to 120 days, and they get kind of old, their walls get stiff, and they get picked off from the circulation. What happens here? This is where it's going down. Same thing is true with platelets, but platelets don't live near as long. Anybody here remember how long platelets live?
40 days.
I think it's 6 to 10.
Yeah, about 7 to 10 days. 7 to 10. So if somebody has thrombocytopenia, where they require a platelet transfusion, well, that platelet transfusion is only going to last maybe a week, and then you have to give them more platelets, because platelets just don't live that long. Okay? Now, Also within the spleen, up to a third of our supply of platelets are simply stored there within the red pulp. So it's an area where we store platelets. And the other thing you need to know about the spleen is that during fetal life, it's active in hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis or hemopoiesis refers to the production of blood. And I know what you're thinking is you're thinking, well, isn't our red bone marrow what produces blood? Well, that's true for us in adult life, postnatally, but before we're born, it's the spleen that produces most of our blood. It's only as we near birth that that role is taken over by the bone marrow. What you'll learn, though, in pathophysiology is this. If something happens to our bone marrow where it becomes ineffective in producing blood, then that role can revert back to the spleen. So our spleen can actually take up that role again. That condition is called extramedullary, which means outside the marrow, hematopoiesis. So there are a number of conditions where our bone marrow fails and our spleen again resumes the role of producing blood. Extramedullary hematopoiesis. Extramedullary hematopoiesis. Drew, can you say that term?
Extramedullary hematopoiesis.
You are good. It's very good. It's very. You know what I want you to do, Drew? You have to talk to your parents?
Yes.
Okay. When you call your parents tonight, maybe you call your mom.
Okay.
I see you come as a mama's boy. All right. When you call your mom, somewhere in that conversation tonight, throw in the term extramedullary hematopoiesis. It'll make her feel good.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Make her feel like she's getting her money's worth. Oh, that's right. You're on scholarship, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Drew is kind of a poster boy for the school. Y'all know that. He's on the website and all that. Kind of a big show off. All right. So these are all some of the functions of the spleen. Now, we're not going to get into this other jazz here, but instead what I want to do today is look at microscopes. Because, you know, our big test, y'all know that our big test is coming up?
Yeah.
Yes. Good times. Let's do this. Let's turn on the Spanish machine over here. Turn it on. Okay. Oh, we're going to cover that next class. That class, we're going to cover that in 30 minutes. All right, now, does everyone know this little group here?
Yeah.
No.
This is a seal. This is three seals. Two seals left. Where'd you go, Doug? I don't even know. You went up. You think you're going back? She's lost. All right. You'll never see two seal again. And then Kimberly. Now I'm gonna ask y'all to rearrange just a little bit though, because this is like the best spot in the whole class right here. Please be looking at slides. Great day. You went to New York, you know. Yeah. I'm going to Colbert show. We were part of the studio audience. Oh, what the? Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you first, I'm going to show you three different lymphatic organs. Remember, to be called an organ, the tissue has to be encapsulated. So all three of these organs I'm going to show you have a capsule, a connective tissue capsule around them. But what you'll notice is that these three lymphatic organs, if you don't know what you're looking at, they all look the same. These are all tissues that are filled up with little purple dots, which represent lymphocytes. So let's just look at low power and look at the organization of the thymus. Let's go. Now, what I don't like about this slide is you don't see the capsule very well. I'm thinking a different one, just to see if you see the capsule better. You see it better? Yeah, this is the capsule here. They did something with floors. And they screwed everything up here. Oh, wait, this is okay. So that's the capsule here. And what you notice is that there are sleeves or extensions of the capsule that invaginate in, like this. You can either call these trabeculae or septa. And what happens is that these trabeculae, what they do is they subdivide the organ into globules. You can see how lobulated the organ is. And remember, this is a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional structure. Okay? So this has three dimensions. We're just seeing two. But you get the idea that these septa, as they extend in, they divide the organ into these lobules, and then each of the lobules has a cortical region and a medullary region. Okay, so this area here, just deep to the capsule, this is the cortical region, and extending along the trabeculi. Whereas the lighter staining zone here is the medullary region, of the medulla. Okay. Remember we said that the thymus is a school for T lymphocytes. That at an early stage in their development, T cells that are born within a bone marrow leave the bone marrow and enter into the thymus. In fact, at this stage, they're called pre-T cells. And when these pre-T cells populate the thymus, they enter into this cortical zone here. And what they're learning here is simply to recognize any foreign pathogen, any foreign material within the body. So the instruction involves learning to recognize self so that they don't attack self, and at the same time learning to recognize anything that is non-self. And these cells divide and differentiate, and as they become more differentiated, more immunogenic, that means capable of mounting an immune response, they move into the medulla here. Okay. As they mature, they move down into the medulla. Now, we need to take a little bit better look. So we're going to bounce it up to a higher power. Okay. And at the higher power, you can see that both the cortex and the medulla are made up largely of these lymphocytes, which at this power just look like dots. See these? And a little bit less densely populated here within the medulla. You can still see the capsule, and you can still see the septa trabeculi, which populate the thymus. Let's go to a little bit higher power still. Now what you'll see is that some of these cells, like this one right here, that doesn't look like a lymphocyte. Does it? Its nucleus is too large. It's got a very prominent nucleolus. There's nothing right on top of it, by the way. Here, this is not a lymphocyte. What we called these when we talked about it was epithelial reticular cells. I think of the term ER for emergency room, epithelial reticular cells. And we said that these cells make up the stroma. In other words, they sit in the background and just form a mattress upon which all of these lymphocytes sit down. So the lymphocytes are sitting on top of this bed of epithelial reticular cells. So when you see one of these big cells that doesn't look like a lymphocyte, that is, it's kind of sneaking out between the lymphocytes and showing itself. There's another one right there. There's another one right there, right there. You have to look closely. Now, oh, look at this is less populated. So I've got look, we're in the medulla now. Now, we said that as these epithelial reticular cells age, they start to break down, degenerate, and they cluster together, forming a little pink swirling mass. These are called either thymic corpuscles or Hassel's corpuscles. Either one is correct. The important point is that these help you to differentiate this organ as being part of the thymus, as opposed to being part of the lymph node or being part of the spleen. Because to a beginner, they can all look alike. So when you see Hassel's corpuscles, it tells you, aha, this is spleen. Now, on the back down, and you can see, by the way, this is kind of a swirling group of cells. There's one right there, there's one right there. The ones in the center here are degenerating. Dying out. Let's move backwards again. So there's that Hassel's corpuscle here within the medulla. That's where they tend to locate. The Hassel's corpuscles or the thymic corpuscles tend to be found within the medulla. So when I approach a lymphatic organ, the way I do is always start at the scanning objective, the lowest power, and look at the architecture. Okay? And when I look at this architecture, it tells me that this organ is lobulated. Right? And the lobules go all the way to the center of the organ. And each of these lobules has a medulla and has a cortex. And within the medulla, you find these Hassel's corpuscles. Okay. So that's the thymus. Remember, do we find any B cells within the thymus?
No.
No. Does the thymus have any direct immune function in terms of destroying organisms? No, it's just a school. It's just a school for T cells. I think that's what makes the thymus nice. Not very political. It's simply there to educate. All right. Now let's look at a lymph node. A lymph node has a very, very distinct architecture. It's not a good one. Fun thing I'll show you guys. All right. If we look at this lymph node here, we're looking at low power. We said a lymph node is kind of a bean-shaped organ, but it's got a different architecture than a thymus. In a lymph node, let's say this is the hilum. Okay? We said it's got a capsule, and then it's got a lot of superficial follicles, lymph follicles that are arranged just deep to the capsule. Now, there may be some deeper follicles as well, but most of them line up just deep to the capsule. And then we said that lymph comes into the lymph node through these afferent lymphatic vessels, and the lymph is going to flow along these subcapsular sinuses. Just like the thymus, there are septa, extensions of the capsule into the organ. Everybody listening? And the sinuses travel from the subcapsular position along the lateral aspect of these trabeculi. In this position, they're called trabecular sinuses. And then the lymph is going to travel from this position into the medulla here. This zone right here is the medulla. Okay? And so these sinuses are called medullary sinuses. And finally, it's going to empty into an efferent lymphatic vessel. Okay, so the flow of lymph is going to be from afferent, subcapsular, trabecular, medullary sinus. Now, in the medulla, you're also going to have cords of lymphocytes. These cords are going to be called medullary cords. So let's look at this. Now, these are superficial lymphatic follicles. Here's the capsule in pink. You see the space here? It kind of closes up right here, but you see the space? That's the subcapsular sinus. These trabeculi extend into the organ like this. And the sinuses that extend behind the trabeculi, these are called trabecular sinuses. Now, this lighter staining tissue in here, the medulla, this is made up, the lighter staining regions are made up of medullary sinuses. So again, this is a trabecular sinus here, 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 here. And then it reaches the medulla, these lighter staining regions are medullary sinuses. Okay. Let's look at the lymph follicles. You notice that some of these lymph follicles have a lighter staining zone in the inside. This is called the germinal center. Okay? A follicle that has a germinal center is reacting to an antigenic challenge. In other words, the lymph node has been exposed to something foreign, and that foreign material has been phagocytosed and presented to B lymphocytes here within the superficial follicle. These B lymphocytes are moving to the center, dividing and differentiating. They're trying to become plasma cells. When you see a superficial follicle, lymphatic follicle, that has a germinal center, we call it a secondary follicle. On the other hand, when you see a follicle like this one or this one that doesn't have a well-defined germinal center, these are called primary follicles. They have not been exposed to any foreign material yet. Now, I don't know if you remember this from AP1, but the stroma of a lymph node, the framework, is made up of reticular connective tissue. Okay? And these fibers of reticular connective tissue can only be seen with a silver stain. This isn't a silver stain. But the fibers crisscross all along these sinuses. And sitting on that framework, you have macrophages. So if this lymph node is filtering lymph that contains a foreign particle, a pathogen, it's going to be phagocytosed by macrophages within the sinuses and presented next door, lymphocytes. Okay? So that little bacterial pathogen doesn't make it all the way back to the efferent lymphatic vessel. It's intercepted, and it's presented to our immune system. Now let's go on. This is the superficial cortex here, where we find all these follicles. Deeper down right here is called the deep cortex. Some people call it the paracortex. Okay? The paracortex contains T cells more than B cells. So the superficial cortex, particularly these follicles, contain mostly B cells, whereas the deeper cortex contains a greater proportion of T cells. So for instance, all of this region here is deep cortex and paracortex. And remember, lymph is percolating through here, through trabecular sinuses, making its way into the medulla. Let's look at the medulla. This is the medullary area. It's got a distinctive appearance to the medulla. And it's made up of medullary cords that contains T cells, B cells, macrophages, and plasma cells. And between these cords, this lighter staining area is medullary sinuses. So again, the architecture of lymph nodes is much different from the architecture of the thymus. It's not lobulated like you see in the thymus. It's different. It's got a different appearance altogether. You're not going to recognize it. This is a cut through a lymphatic vessel. And lymphatic vessels have valves. This is one valve. This is another valve. It's kind of a crazy oblique section. But for those of you who are going into medical school and are going to take histology, you would recognize that as a lymphatic vessel. Now, I'm going to show you one other picture of the lymph node just so we get a little variety. take a look at this bad boy. So this has to be its superficial cortex here. Look, you have nice, well-defined subcapsular sinuses. What kind of tissue is this right here? Yeah, it's just fat. And these are trabeculi extending in like this, and these are trabecular sinuses. They're going to make their way all the way into the medulla. And the medulla has a distinctive appearance. So this is medullary tissue here. It's just kind of odd. See some odd, deep follicles that looking around. This has to be the hilum right in this region here. See a lot of fat. Okay. So in the medulla again, you see these cords, medullary cords, and the lighter staining tissue is simply going to be medullary sinuses. Now finally, let's look at the spleen. Notice that they're all made up, these organs are all made up predominantly of lymphocytes. Now, the spleen has a more haphazard arrangement. You're going to see follicles within the spleen, but within the spleen, these follicles can be anywhere. It doesn't have, the follicles don't have the same distribution as you see in the lymph node, where they're positioned just deep to the capsule. Okay? And in fact, typically, these splenic follicles, or what we call splenic nodules, are part of white pulp. So they're going to be associated with a central artery. They're going to surround the central artery. So if we simply look at this tissue here from low power, we'll see that, oh, this has to be lymphatic tissue. You see a lot of follicles, but they're not arranging themselves, lining up just deep to the capsule. They're present haphazardly throughout the spleen. And we said that the darker staining, and by the way, the capsule here does have extensions into the spleen. So for instance, here's trabeculi right here. That's trabecular extension or something. But it doesn't form well-differentiated lobules. In fact, what happens is, as blood vessels enter into the spleen, like the splenic artery, the blood vessel becomes invested with the sleeve of this capsular material, this fibrous connective tissue. So typically, you'll oftentimes see these septa or trabecularly surrounding blood vessels as they branch. Okay? So let's look here. This right here, it's hard to see because it's longitudinal, but this is a central artery, and this surrounding sleeve of lymphocytes that make up a nodule here. This is white pulp. Whereas the stuff that's between this area of white pulp and this area of white pulp, this area here is red pulp. So what we find, like here, this is white pulp. Close look, we'll look at that. That's going to be the central artery. So that's a little central artery right here. A branch of the splenic artery that enters the spleen and surrounded by white pulp. Now, next door, we see red pulp. Sometimes within the red pulp, you can see well-formed sinuses. For instance, these open spaces here are splenic sinuses. And then right here with these splenic cords, where you have just a cluster of cells. So these splenic cords, or Billroth's cords, are positioned between sinuses like this and this right here. Again, this is white pulp. There's a central artery right here. Kind of an oblique view. It's not quite longitudinal and not quite cross-section. That's a central artery. So, what I thought we would do is take out our microscopes. What I'd like to do is look at all three of these lymphatic organs and learn to recognize them. Now, after we do this, by the way, I just want to give you a heads up, for the test on Friday, you're going to be expected to look at microscopes on the lungs and airways, as well as the lymphatic organs. So today we're going to look at the lymphatic organs, and then we're going to look at the lungs and the airways.
Dr. Pinner, will you be lecturing during the microscope?
No, I'm coming around the class and looking at the microscope. So if you have any questions,